What is up, everyone? I'm Kimmi Chex. That dude next to me is Adam Rank. You are watching NFL Fantasy Bites. Rank, it is week 9. We are more than halfway through the regular season this year. It's 2020. It's been a crazy year, but at least we've got football and fantasy football to count on. How are you this Thursday?
You know what? I'm doing pretty well. Anytime that I get here to share some stage time. I don't know if I can call it stage time anymore because we're recording from our respective homes. But of course, it's always good to be here with you and to talk a little bit of fantasy football with everything going on. And we got a great show coming up. We got the bites of the week. We've got predictions for second half breakouts. We got Michael F. Florio. If he's not rocking a floral shirt today, he's out forever. And we got that. But Kim, how you holding up? How you doing?
You know, I'm good. The fantasy football is the perfect distraction from everything going on in the world. But it was funny. I was on Twitter, and my fiance and I are obsessed with fantasy, and we play each other, and it's like a joke around our house. And someone tweeted, he said, so I'm explaining to my wife the way she feels about this election and all the craziness that's happening. It's how I feel every single week when I have a mediocre wide receiver going up, and I need him to score 15 points, but he has 6 fantasy points, and it's the middle of the fourth quarter. And I was like, I get it. A fantasy football analogy is pertinent to everything going on in the world, so it's fun. But earlier you mentioned that we're going to go through our bites of the week, so let's do that right now and kick it off with you, Adam Rank.
Well, I've been looking at some of our next-gen stats, and we unearthed a pretty interesting little nugget here this week, and it's about Tom Brady. And I know a lot of people think because he's an older quarterback and he's not going to be throwing the ball downfield, but did you know that this season that 14% of his passes have actually been downfield? And that might not seem like a lot, but that's his highest rate in the last 5 seasons. And I think part of that has to do with an improved cast around him. He's got 2 excellent receivers. He's got Rob Gronkowski, and he's got Coach Bruce Arians, who is famous for saying, no risk it, no biscuit. And now he's bringing Antonio Brown into the mix. And I'll just jump into this right away because a lot of people have been asking me, do you get him into your lineup? He hasn't played football in a while. How's the chemistry going to work? But we've seen this situation play out previously. Last year, in Antonio Brown's first and only game of the 2019 season, he caught 5 passes. He had around 50 yards, but he caught a touchdown. And that's the one thing that stands out to me is that Tom Brady is going to want to get his new wide receiver involved. You know that Mike Evans wants to make him feel comfortable. So listen, they're going to be like, why don't you take one of these 1-yard touchdown receptions? Hopefully he gets enough in between the 20s to make it a little bit more worthwhile than getting 6.1 fantasy points. But I'm a huge fan of it this week, so I'm going to be playing Antonio Brown.
Interesting. You know, I think it's interesting that we have seen in the press conferences, the virtual press conferences this week, that Antonio Brown talks about that relationship that he does have with Tom Brady. He said he's a really good friend of him. He's a mentor. He's really helped out in everything that's happened in Antonio's world. So I think it's going to be really interesting and really fun to see them going up against the New Orleans Saints. It's Tom Brady, Drew Brees, all of those teams and all of those dynamics and those chemistries will all be on full display. So looking forward to Sunday night's matchup. But it's time for my bite of the week, and I want to talk about Josh Allen because he was really good the first half of the season, and then he's kind of not so hot. But this week, I truly do believe that it is going to be a bounce-back week for Josh Allen because he has the second best matchup for the quarterback position this week going up against the Seattle Seahawks, who are allowing the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, approximately 25 fantasy points a game. Now, I'm talking about how good Josh Allen was at the beginning of the season. He was averaging around 30 fantasy points a game and was in the conversation for MVP, but then the last few weeks, he's averaged less than 16 fantasy points a game. Now, I understand he has had some tough matchups. There's been some other issues going on, but for a lot of us fantasy managers who are thinking this guy was going to be our MVP, we are holding on and hoping and wishing and praying and crossing our fingers for a bounce back. I truly do believe that it is going to happen this week, going up against Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. If Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills want to stay competitive with Dangerous, they're going to have to throw the ball. So Josh Allen, please do not disappoint and let me down because I'm hanging on for dear life with you at my quarterback position. And for other fantasy managers that do have Josh Allen, just a reminder, he has an upcoming bye week in week 11. So make sure you are prepped and ready for that one. Now, speaking of predictions, because I had predicted that Josh Allen could be a fantasy MVP, we have some predictions for the second half of the season. Now, I want to start with this prediction. Adam Rank, who do you think is going to be a league winner for the second half of the fantasy season?
Well, I'm looking at Chase Edmonds in Arizona and his opportunity to go out there and really establish himself as the number one running back. Now, we still don't know if Kenyon Drake is going to play this week, and there's an opportunity that he makes a miracle recovery and returns. But what we've seen out of Chase Edmonds over the last number of weeks is that he's probably the better running back. And we saw this situation sort of play out last season when the Cardinals made the trade for Kenyon Drake. He came in, replaced David Johnson, just kind of took over and was the running back moving forward. I kind of look forward to a repeat this season with Chase Edmonds. And in this offense that's certainly dynamic, giving him the opportunity to go out there and shine, I think that this is a player that you probably didn't draft. You probably picked him up off the waiver wire. And now you're pairing him with some of the studs that you probably already have on your roster with like Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey's returning, or you got Alvin Kamara or Dalvin Cook or some situation like that. Having Chase Edmonds as that RB2 is going to carry you to a fantasy football championship.
Okay, Chase Edmonds. I know all the Kenyon Drake fantasy managers are plugging their ears because that's not what we had expected or predicted for this season, but he has been incredibly dominant in that offense. All the Arizona Cardinals, honestly, look really good this season. So lucky you if you got shares of Chase Edmonds or anyone else on that team. All right, so my league winner for the second half of the season is Tyler Boyd. I bought in early and often to the Cincinnati Bengal offense because I was really excited about what Joe Burrow was going to be able to do. Now, a lot of people thought I was crazy because I was hyping up Tyler Boyd and I was hyping up T. Higgins and kind of besmirched A.J. Green, but it's because Tyler Boyd is absolutely the number one wide receiver for this offense. He's had 21% of the target share this season. He's leading all of Cincinnati. He's also leading all of Cincinnati in 11 red zone targets this season. The extra little cherry on top of this is that he's at a receiving touchdown in 2 straight games. He's also had over 19 fantasy points in 2 straight games. The Bengals, their schedule does get a little bit easier this latter half of the season. I think Tyler Boyd has been a pleasant surprise, and anyone who has him on their squad, you should be really happy with that consistent production that's been coming out of him all season long. Plus, Joe Burrow, he has to throw the ball often just so that they stay competitive as a team. And Tyler Boyd, he's picking up all of the amazingness from Joe Burrow. All right, another prediction for this one. Adam Rank, starting with you. Who is going to be the breakout player this latter half of the fantasy football season?
Well, I'm going to go with Mike Williams. And obviously, we've seen games where he's had amazing catches. He goes out there and does the OBJ kind of thing with the one-handed grabs. He did it, obviously, last week at Denver. The one thing, so I know it's not a true breakout, but what I'm hoping to see out of Williams moving forward is just a little bit more consistency. We see the talent there, and we know that Keenan Allen is going to be the number one pass catcher in this offense. I just want a little bit of consistency. I want this to be an offense where you can kind of balance 2 big-time wide receivers, and it kind of brings me back to where Aaron Rodgers, when he had Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams a couple of years ago, I believe it was 2016, where both of those wide receivers finished in the top 10. I would love to see this Chargers offense just turn it over to Justin Herbert forever. Like, let's not even worry about it. Like, whatever you're doing now as a team is not working because you keep blowing games. So how about you just let Herbert attempt 50 passes a game, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams go out there and dominate. So I'm trying to just breathe this into existence because I have a 14-team league where my quarterback stack is Justin Herbert and Mike Williams, and I really want this to become a thing. But I think that he has the ability and the chance to make that happen.
So you're just speaking it all into existence. He had a really good game last week. A lot of this is selfish. I know. I was like, I feel like this is just for you. Come on, right? We got to give fantasy advice for the people. But I am really excited about Mike Williams. I think this Justin Herbert quarterback situation for the Los Angeles Chargers is one of the most exciting quarterback situations across all of the NFL right now. I always like to root for the young rookies, but he has impressed, and Keenan Allen's fantasy stock has risen. So has Mike Williams. So let's hope that keeps on keeping on. All right, my breakout player for this latter half of the season, Florio's going to like this one because he's a Buffalo Bills fan, and I was talking about Josh Allen earlier. Instead, I want to talk about Zack Moss and how he's going to be a beast the rest of this fantasy football season, starting with this Sunday going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Zack Moss, he came back in week 6 after dealing with an injury, and he's just blown up ever since then. And he's incredible. Guys, he's playing 53% of the snaps. That's what he played against the Patriots in week 8, whereas Devin Singletary, he only played 49% of the snaps. Another reason why I think Zack Moss has a little bit better of an upside than Devin Singletary, even though I'm not by any means saying that he is the lead back in this offense, is because of the upside he has, especially in the end zone and the red zone. He has had 6 touches inside the 10-yard line this season, where Devin Singletary has only had 3. Our friend and colleague Marcus Grant, he always jokes about it. He says Devin Singletary is allergic to the end zone, so that means huge upside for Zack Moss. I know that this is a very pass-heavy offense, but they also run the ball quite a lot as well. Josh Allen can't be swinging it every single play of the game, which is where Zack Moss comes into the picture. So Zack Moss, keep on keeping on. I'm rooting for you. I have shares of you. So like Adam Rank, I'm trying to speak this into existence. But if you do have Zack Moss on, I know. I'm learning from you. But if you do have shares of Zack Moss, you should be pretty excited this latter half of the season and hope that he can bring you home a fantasy championship. All right, Rank, that's it for the A block.
Wait, hold on. I wanted to say one thing about that. That whole, the point that you made about Zack Moss getting the touchdown, that is a huge thing. And I know that we're sitting here joking about, like, this is personal to me. Like, we have 90 fantasy football teams, so we have every player. So it's always going to be personal. But the one thing, it's impressive because once he returned to the lineup, he was the running back that they went to. And they, like, I think there's a pecking order of goal line touches. It's like Zack Moss, Josh Allen, every member of the Goo Goo Dolls, including the touring guys, not the actual members of the bands, and then Devin Singletary. And I know you've never heard of the Goo Goo Dolls. They were very popular when I was in high school, but whatever. But they don't go to anybody else. So I love that pick of Zack Moss. And what I don't like is that you're trying to curry favor with Florio going with 2 Bills there. That was a little much.
Okay, well, I don't want to tease this too much, but I am making a really good point about a Chicago Bear later on in the show. Okay, but it is time for a break. Sadly, it's time for a break, but you should stay with us because the trade deadline is quickly approaching. So up next, Fantasy Florio drops by to tell you who needs to be on your radar. These are bold players who make bold moves. Let's get you that championship win. Stick with us. It's Fantasy Bites, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Bites. It's no longer just Adam Rank and I, it's Michael F. Fantasy Florio, and today you delivered. Earlier on the show, Adam Rank said that if you're not wearing a floral shirt, you're kicked off forever. So you're here and you're wearing floral.
Yeah, I can't risk, getting kicked off the show forever. So I had to run and put on a floral shirt real quick because, what would I do if I got kicked off the show?
You were wearing a Goo Goo Dolls t-shirt, weren't you?
How'd you know?
Who are the Goo Goo Dolls?
It's a band from the 90s.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
A band from the 90s from Buffalo. I'm sure that they played Florio's prom or something like that.
All right, let's focus to fantasy football, not the Goo Goo Dolls. People came for the fantasy advice, and Michael F. Florio, that is what you are going to give today. But you want to talk about some trade targets that people should look to go after this latter half of the season. Kick me off with your number one guy.
My number one guy is James Robinson, and I was trying to think of a creative way to tie in a Goo Goo Dolls song to him, but I couldn't do it on the spot. Yeah, I really couldn't. But James Robinson this year right now, he's 8th amongst running backs, seeing over 19 touches per game. That is huge volume each and every week. He has the 3rd easiest schedule the rest of the way for running backs. He's been super consistent as well. 16 plus touches in every game this year, one of 3 running backs to do so. He's been a top 10 running back in 4 of his last 6 games. And the switch at quarterback makes me think that they're going to be more reliant on the run going forward than they are with Gardner Minshew, because they were running the ball the least amount in the league with Gardner Minshew. So I don't see that there being any way that they run less now with the new quarterback.
You know what? If you have James Robinson on your roster, I'm going to be struck with, hey, jealousy. All right. I had time to think of a Goo Goo Dolls song, so I had the advantage there. But one of the things that you need to do this week, and I think Mike would agree with this, I agree with you in that they're going to lean heavily on James Robinson. What you need to do is is try to get the person who currently has James Robinson on their roster believe that Jake Luton is going to be awful for that team. And like, you should want to give him up. Like, you're not going to want him because this Jags offense isn't going to be, they certainly are. They're going to be fine with Jake. It's not going to be that big of a deal, but convince the person who has James Robinson that that's the case and that you're doing them a favor by taking James Robinson off their team.
All right, look, Petty Adam Rank giving you insights to get James Robinson in a trade. All right, Florio, give me your second guy. This is a guy who is just named as a team captain. He's kind of had a Cinderella story on his team. Who is it?
It's wide receiver Terry McLaurin from the Washington football team. We saw him a couple weeks ago as team captain, really giving that inspirational speech, Kimmi. And right now, they're throwing the ball to him plenty. 30% target share this season. That is the third highest amongst wide receivers. He leads the NFL, seeing 44% of his team's air yard shares this year. So he's getting all the deep balls this year from them. And his schedule the rest of the way is just so great. It is the third best schedule for the rest of the season. And when you look at the fantasy playoffs in specifically, fifth easiest. So this is a guy who not only can win you a lot of weeks going forward, he can win you a championship come the fantasy playoffs. Yeah,
I love this pick. And it's weird to think about right now. Is Kyle Allen currently the best quarterback in the NFC East? Now it's, I'm this Carson Wentz obviously is, but like, I don't think that his situation's that bad, and I agree with Florio. With the schedule and the way that he's got that target share lined up, I think this is one of the best receivers to have in all of fantasy football. I think he could easily be a top 5. Top 5 might be a little generous, but top 10, I think that's perfectly doable.
All right, Terry McLaurin, you got to be a top 10 guy for the rest of the season. We have high expectations for you, but we're rooting for you. All right, Florio, hit me with your third and final guy. This one's personal to me, so I love it. I'm so excited for you to talk about him. Tell the people who it is.
I was going to say, you could trade for this guy in every league that Kimmi is not in, because I'm pretty sure, Kimmi, you're going to have this guy on your roster and not want to give him up. But it is Noah Fant, your personal friend, Denver Broncos tight end. And what I like so much about Fant going forward is he is the third best fantasy schedule for tight ends. And he's already been getting a lot of opportunity there, and he's been playing a lot better with Drew Lock this year. He's averaging nearly 14 fantasy points per game with Lock compared to just 9 with other quarterbacks. His target share right now is the 7th highest amongst tight ends. So the fact that him and Lock are connecting, that the volume is already going his way, and that the schedule is about to open up, I think he can be a potential league winner at a position that is not filled with a lot of potential league winners.
Yeah, I really like this pick. I made the same like observation, telling people like, hey, see if Noah Fant's available in your league or something like that. I'm like, unless you're playing with Kimmi Chex, because then that is not going to happen. But when you look at the state of the tight end position right now, and Travis Kelce is obviously in a class all by himself, there's really like a weird, like, it's a battle royal scrum of guys below him with like Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, who's been playing very well. And I think that Noah Fant is kind of entering that conversation as well. It's like they're in that second tier of tight ends. And I think that what we saw in the second half from Drew Lock last week is something that we're going to see moving forward. So I'm very optimistic about Noah Fant moving through the rest of the season.
Aw, I love it. It's so funny. Whenever we talk about Noah, I think back to when we were both at the University of Iowa together, and he played for the team and I worked for the football program, and seeing like 18-year-old Noah Fant, not even knowing that he would go on to be an NFL star. So that it just warms my heart, makes me happy. But that's enough of trade targets. Let's get to some social questions while we have Florio still here. As a reminder, if you ever have questions for us about your fantasy squad or just ways to improve or help or start them or sit them, tweet us at NFL Fantasy, and maybe you can be like this guy and get on the show. All right, Florio, I'm going to start this question off with you. Tran wants to know, do I start Corey Davis or Chase Claypool at the flex spot this week?
I know the matchup is telling us to play Claypool. The Cowboys give up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers, and the Bears just simply don't. But I'm going to go with Corey Davis here, because Corey Davis has seen 10 targets in 2 straight games. He's scored 11 fantasy points in every single game this year. He is a very safe floor, and we saw what the upside was last week. I know it's a hard matchup. It may be hard to get that upside. Claypool on the other side is kind of a a wild card. Like, he has 2 games this year with 9 or more targets and less than 5 in every other game. And 2 weeks ago, I thought was a week we could trust him against the Titans in a good matchup, and he finished with less than 1 fantasy point. So I think he is just a pure boom or bust option every week.
Yeah, and by the way, shout out to our friend Eric Young, the Impact World Champion, who on our Fantasy Football Spectacular this August called the breakout season for Corey Davis. That being said, I'm going to leave him on the bench. I think that because of the high upside of Claypool, and in this game against the Dallas Cowboys, I feel like something weird is going to happen. I know that's not the way that you go out and manage a fantasy football. Or maybe it is. Maybe that's the way that I do it. But I like him. I like him to get an opportunity near the goal line for whatever reason. I just think that with the way this Cowboys team has been playing, something crazy is going to happen. And like you said, the Bears have been shutting down wide receivers. They've allowed only 2 touchdown receptions to wide receivers this season. Last week, it was Jared Cook and Taysom Hill who caught touchdown passes. I'm mad at you about that, Florio. But anyways, I'm going to go with Chase Claypool.
All right, Rank, I'm going to agree with you on this one because we've learned all season long you want to start every offensive player you have against the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm rocking with Claypool. All right, let's get another question in while we still have Florio here. I'm going to start with you again, Florio, because Simon tweeted at you directly. Michael Florio, Juju or DJ Chark this week?
Yeah, I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steeler here in Juju. Again, what you guys said about the matchup is all true. The Cowboys allow a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers, the 7th most in the league right now. And Juju's been playing better the last 2 weeks. He's had 8 and 14 targets in those games and at least 13 fantasy points. Plus, when it comes to Chark, it just hasn't been there for him. 1 top 30 wide receiver finish all year, and now he is a complete unknown at the quarterback position. I'm staying away from him this week.
You know what? It's funny because you look at Juju, and I think that his floor is very safe. I think that 5 receptions and around 60 yards, so about 11 fantasy points. I think that's the bare minimum. If he gets into the end zone, that's going to be a great day. You're going to be very happy with that. I just love the situation in Jacksonville with DJ Chark, because Jake Luton to me is a good quarterback. This is somebody that I saw play at Oregon State. I'm not going to say it's so on brand for the Jags to go out there, use a 6th-round pick on a Pac-12 quarterback that you probably never saw play unless you stay up past midnight on Saturdays into Sunday morning. But he's a good quarterback, and I believe that when he's under duress or when he needs to throw the football to somebody, he's going to be looking for DJ Chark. He's the most talented receiver on that team, and I think when you get these young guys, they know who the stud is, and they know who's going to bail them out. So he's going to be looking at DJ Chark this week. So I kind of think it's kind of a fun little play. I don't think the floor is as safe as what it is for Juju. I think that's a very comfortable floor, but I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. I want a little bit more upside with a player like DJ Chark. Hopefully you've got him paired with somebody like DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams, and Chark is your number 2, where you can kind of risk the upside over the security.
Okay, we'll have to see how the cookie crumbles and see who has the better performance this week, Juju or DJ Chark. I seriously cannot say his name without singing the song. He has ruined Baby Shark, DJ Chark, whatever. He's ruined it for me, but enough of that. Florio, thank you for always joining us. As a reminder, Florio every single week puts out a list of sleepers. You can go to NFL.com/Florio to find that list ahead of week 9 matchups. But Florio, you also have your weekly rankings. Tell the people where they can find that.
Yeah, you just go to NFL.com/rankings. Simple enough, but make sure to keep checking back right now because there's so much stuff up in the air that they're going to get updated a good amount.
And I'm going to make fun of them on Saturday or Fridays, NFL Fantasy Live. I sit there and I pick apart Florio's. I take out a red Sharpie and I just go through his rankings. I'm like, nope. It's a fun segment. So check it out on NFL Fantasy Live, Fridays, 6 p.m. Eastern.
All right, I love it. Florio getting all the screen time because he's our guy. He's Michael F. Fantasy Florio. We appreciate you, and thank you for joining as always. It's time for another break, but you are going to want to stick around because coming up, we're talking our favorite juicy matchups, plus our Club Dub Players of the Week. These are the dudes that are going to have your lineups popping off, and we are going to guarantee that they get you 25+ fantasy points. Stay with us. NFL Fantasy Points, NFL Fantasy Bites. We'll be right back.
Bye.
Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Bites. This is our last block of the show, but it's the funnest because we get to tell you which guys are going to pop off and help win you your fantasy matchups for Week 9. Adam Rank, let's start with which guys have favorable matchups and are going to be dynamite this week. Kick me off with your guy.
You know what? I really believe that this is going to be an opportunity for Jerry Jeudy to step forward this week. We've been kind of waiting. Like he's obviously a talented receiver. We thought coming into the draft, if he wasn't the best receiver, he was certainly one of the best. A great class with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. And we've just been waiting for that marquee breakout game, the one where you're like, yes, because like Justin Jefferson has had that. We've seen CeeDee Lamb capture our imagination, but I believe that this is the perfect opportunity going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who've allowed the second most receiving yards per game to wide receivers. Now, it's not the Falcons team that we saw at the beginning of the year. It's not necessarily a pushover, but I still believe there's an opportunity here. I think that Drew Lock, again, is really starting to hit his stride that we saw at the end of last season. I'm forecasting a breakout for Jerry Jeudy this week. I'm going to try to get him into as many lineups as possible. If you're playing DFS, I think this is a good opportunity to play him as well. I actually kind of like a Broncos stack. I know that when we go on Fantasy Live, we do stacks on stacks on stacks. I was thinking about a Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy stack. I might even still change it. No. I'm saving it for this show. I'm saving it for Fantasy Bites. You're only getting it here. This is a Fantasy Bites exclusive. I love that Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy stack this week, and I'm not going to be afraid to play it.
I love that as well. Jerry Jeudy, he had some big drops earlier on in the season, but you've seen him get way more comfortable in that offense, build some rapport with Drew Lock, and really start to look like a studly wide receiver. So I think you're right. This could be the breakout game and opportunity for Jerry Jeudy. So good luck to those of you who are starting him. I want to go and talk about David Johnson going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Adam Rank, you've been hyping the Jags all of this show, so let me hype the other team that goes up and plays against them this week.
Fair enough.
The reason why I love this matchup so much is because the Jacksonville Jaguars are allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. David Johnson, he's actually been pretty darn consistent. He's had 10 plus fantasy points in all game but one this season, and he's hauled in 4 different touchdowns on the year. Now, Jacksonville, they've allowed 9 different running backs to finish within the top 26 at the position, but they've also had 7 games, including 3 top 4 performances at the running back position. There have also been 3 different running backs who have scored multiple touchdowns against them. I feel like David Johnson has the opportunity to go out and do it this week. So that's why I love him and this matchup. Now it's time, though, for the best part of the show. It's Club Dub.
Oh, I didn't bring my jacket this week.
I know. Where's your fun jacket? What are you doing? What are you doing?
I know. I'm so verklempt that I forgot a jacket to wear.
You're letting the people down. It's Week 9 and you just completely slipped your mind. I see how important we are on this show. Air horn. All right.
I'm letting everybody down this week.
I know. Come on. Stop doing that. All right. Club Dub. These are the players that we guarantee are going to score 25 plus fantasy points in their matchups this week. Adam Rank, who is your lucky 25 plus fantasy point Club Dub player?
I'm going to go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, his streak of at least 11 fantasy points every game. No, I'm saying that I was saying something bad, but he had at least 11 fantasy points in every game until last week against the New York Jets. And then that Chiefs team just went out and decided, like, you know what? Patrick Mahomes has been limited this year, like hasn't really had like a monster game. Let's let him throw 5 touchdowns. And really, I'll allow that. He's deserved it. He's probably the best quarterback. Well, listen, I don't want to give I gotta give love to Russell Wilson as well. Now I'm talking about 18 different things. But I do love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. One of the things that we always see out of Andy Reid is that he is very magnanimous. He understands when he's let down fantasy enthusiasts. And he knows he did last week by not letting Clyde get into the end zone. This week, I expect to be a very heavy run script. Of course, this matchup against the Carolina Panthers is one of the best. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs this season. The only guy who really wasn't able to do much or didn't really take advantage of it was David Montgomery of the Bears, but I don't believe that that's going to be a problem this week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 25 points. He's got 2 touchdowns on the season. I say he gets 2 touchdowns in this game.
This is weird. It's Freaky Friday. It's like you get to hype up a Kansas City Chief when normally I would do that. And now for my Club Dub Player of the Week, I get to hype up a guy who plays for your Chicago Bears. Nice. I'm rocking with Allen Robinson this week. The Bears are playing the Tennessee Titans. You need to send me a Bears hat, so then whenever I talk about all the Bears player, I can just rock a hat and hype them up. But Allen Robinson, this guy going up against the Tennessee Titans, they are allowing the second most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. He was a beast last week against New Orleans. This is when I was like, you guys need to pay this man. He tied and finished as the 12th fantasy wide receiver. He had 20 plus fantasy points. He also got a share of the end zone on 87 yards in 6 receptions. He's had 19 plus fantasy points in 4 out of the last 6 games. A lot of that came from the change at the quarterback position, and he is reaping all the benefits of that. Now, when Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, he was averaging 9 fantasy points a game. But with the change in Nick Foles, he is now averaging 18 fantasy points per game. So that quarterback switch really did mean good things for Allen Robinson. And he has such a good matchup this week against the Tennessee Titans. I think he can reproduce the numbers he had last week against the Saints and hopefully get into the end zone for you and secure you 25 plus fantasy points. Rank, how do you feel? I'm hyping up your Chicago Bears.
You know what? I got you a hat, number 1. So there you go.
Thank you.
I don't know how I'm going to get that.
Did you go run and get a blazer? How did you do that so quickly?
Listen, this is part of the allure of working at home, is that it's so easy to go back and go into the prop closet and get your sick club jacket. Because this is the club jacket. Like when I walk in, people are like, "Is that Pitbull over there?" And you're like, "No, it's me. It's Adam Rank." I do. I like the matchup. I love Allen Robinson this week. I think he's incredible. I'm scared about the offensive line, but the offensive line's been so bad anyways. I'm like, what could be worse? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, maybe we'll have Akeem Hicks and all those guys on the defensive side of the football just play offensive line this week. Like, they're not going to come off the field. I don't think it could be any worse. So I'm with you. I'm very confident in Allen Robinson this week. And by the way, extend him already. Please.
Right. Pay the man. Come on. Secure that coin.
If we don't, he's going to play for the Packers for the bare minimum just to spite us. And you know what? I'm not even going to be mad at him. I might even root for him in those games.
Don't do that. Don't root for the enemy. But speaking of not being mad, I'm not mad at things that you can watch and download for free. Speaking of that, go download the NFL Fantasy app. It's free. It's awesome. You can have it on your phone. One of the sneaky parts of the app that not a lot of people know about is once you enter the app, there's a little TV button right at the top. If you click that, you get live NFL games for free. Someone tweeted at Adam Rank and said, my girlfriend wants to watch The Bachelorette, but I want to watch football. What do I do? And he's like, bro, download the app. You can have the Bachelor. You can look at Claire being the worst Bachelorette in history, and then also have football on your phone. So make sure you go download it. You can watch the full slate of games and have fun. And you can also check your fantasy scores while you do it. Adam Rank, this isn't the only show we do. Obviously, we do Fantasy Live. This is Fantasy Bites. But we also have a show on Sunday. Tell people where they can watch it and why they should watch us.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, NFL Fantasy Game Day comes to you on Sunday mornings, 12 Eastern. You can, of course, watch that on the all-new NFL Fantasy app. We're also available on YouTube, Facebook, pretty much any way that you watch television nowadays. We will find you and we will be helping you set your lineups. One of the cool things, obviously, Kimmi's on it, Marcus is on it, Michael F. Florio also on that show. But if you watch us on YouTube, well, Michael F. Florio is in the comments section answering all of your fantasy questions. So if we can't get to it on the show, he can be sitting there helping you, and he does such a great job of it. I know we sit here, we make fun of him, we love his floral t-shirts. Michael F. Florio really does an amazing job for us, so make sure that you join us. We all do. Like, Kimmy's been crushing it. Marcus is great. I'm all right. But listen, Sunday mornings, 12 Eastern, please check out the NFL Fantasy Game Day. You won't be disappointed.
All right, that's the next opportunity for you guys to watch us and join along. Thank you so much for sticking with us. I'm Kimmi Chex. That guy is Adam Rank, and you were watching NFL Fantasy Fights. We'll see you next Thursday.